Good morning and welcome to another episode of Night Mode Gaming News here on the Snorri Time channel. So happy to be here again this week. I did unfortunately suffer from some migraines this week. But that's just how the cookie crumbles sometimes. On happier news, I also did sous vide my very first steaks in an Instapot. Now, technically, I had done the dishwasher sous vide, if you're familiar with that technique. And I actually thought it turned out pretty good that time. But doing it in the Instapot is definitely a more controlled experience. By the way, if you are enjoying this week's music, it is brought to you by Lofi Girl once again. You can find links in the description to their lo-fi hip-hop radio to relax and study to sleep and chill to. Once again, a very good complimentary music service for what we're trying to accomplish here with Night Mode. So definitely check out those links down below. They are so kind as to allow creators like myself use their music when properly credited, so I do my best. Starting off this week, let's talk about, to me, some of the most exciting news. HBO dropped the first look at The Last of Us show, which is going to be an HBO exclusive, I believe. It was just a very tiny snippet in the trailer that preceded the House of Dragons, or House of the Dragon, which is sort of a prequel to the Game of Thrones series, looking at like the Targaryens' history. I'm really actually not all that familiar with the show or its concept, but I'm pretty sure that's what it's about. But Pedro Pascal, as we probably already know, is headlining as Joel, with Bella Ramsey as Ellie, and Nick Offerman, which I did not realize this somehow, that Nick Offerman was going to be in the show as well. So that I have to watch it because there's just something about him and the characters he tends to play, I suppose, that I just really appreciate the no-nonsense attitude that he brings to his characters. It's very, very fun. It's very cool for Naughty Dog to be breaking into the mainstream media space with their game, especially considering like Last of Us 2 did not, it was not quite the sweep they were probably hoping for when it came to their player base's feedback and reviews and things. It was a little bit more controversial in how they made out with Last of Us 2. I don't actually have an HBO subscription. I usually just subscribe for the specific shows that I want to watch. But it's usually a good time to catch up on other things as well. I've been in a little bit of a historical drama kick recently. So maybe if I get this HBO subscription, I'll check out, like, I think it's called the Gilded Age? Gilded Cage, maybe? Sort of turn of the last century, I suppose, drama. In similar news, though, to our Last of Us Blade video game in the works, or at least that was the rumor, that Ubisoft was going to be working on yet another entry in the Marvel Universe gaming space. In case you did not know, Blade is part of the Marvel Universe. And this news sort of was floating around Twitter, Instagram, and then I know there was some coverage here on YouTube as well, with some mocap actors posing together with props and the clapperboards that showed, Marvel Blade stuff on it. Unfortunately, though, Ubisoft did come out like just before recording this and, kind of quashed the claims that they would be working on a Blade video game, or at least that the images portrayed were not for a video game. That was for the Marvel movie. They sort of tossed the hot potato over to Marvel and their upcoming Blade movie. I don't know if that's supposed to be some sort of reboot or if it's some sort of continuation in the sort of long and storied history of the Blade character, Blade the Vampire Hunter. If we ever do get a game, though, I would really, and if Ubisoft, we're going to frontline that, I would really hope it was less Assassin's Creed and more Spider-Man. There have been some really, the Guardians of the Galaxy game that recently came out. Great story, great direction, really cool to see this sort of cross-media entertainment happening and crossing over with the game's space. I really hope to see more of that moving forward. I think that's a really cool thing to have, something like, Naughty Dog, Last of Us getting picked up by HBO. And then, of course, the Marvel universe is just huge, obviously. Like, we've had Spider games for a very long time. We've had Spider-Man movies for a very long time. Like, that whole empire continues to grow. But it's very interesting to me to see, like, how that cross-media pollination, if you will, continues to affect the entertainment space, especially as more of these media companies outside of gaming take an interest in what we're doing. It's very, very cool. Now, I know last week I had mentioned towards the very end, if you stuck with me, that I always try to be a little cautious talking about politics or religion, controversial topics, the things you don't talk about at dinner sort of thing. But something did come across my newsfeed, which I just thought it was just sort of ironic. Apparently, the Cult of the Lamb developers, who had already been getting harassed on their release day because they were launching a little bit later in the day, and fans were just like, give us the game, where's the game? Someone on Twitter shared that the devs had received this email claiming that they were being quite heretics. How could they possibly create such a game when their studio is based in Texas, and kind of just accusing them that this is like a very bad look, even though quite obviously we have no idea like what the people, like the actual people, what their individual proclivities are when it comes to their beliefs or whatever. But as a Christian myself, it was just so funny because I just had to jump in and think about it, and just like, if this game, which has, as far as I can tell, no references to any actual, at least as far as I'm aware, real religious entities. And if you're feeling targeted by like how this game is portraying religion or the church or whatever, like, you might want to take a step back and ask yourself, are you part of a cult? Like, maybe maybe you are, because like I can't speak for everyone, but I go to church and like nothing that the Cult of the Lamb portrays in a religious sense has any like actual bearing on like how a religious organization operates, unless they're actually a cult, right? So it's like somebody might want to reach out to the sender of that email and just ask like, are you okay? Do you need help? Blink twice if you need help. But that was just my 2 cents. I just thought it was very funny. And I think it's important for people to stand up sometimes when someone is claiming something, and just to point out the silliness of the whole endeavor. So I'm happy to do that. I feel like that's a fine thing to do. In different, cooler community news, at least, I was thinking about how we've just been inundated with these game delays and cancellations, and how that has really cleared my dance card. Little historical reference for you. My dance card of AAA titles, really through the end of this year practically. There have just been more and more games coming out as delayed or canceled. You know, some have only been pushed back a few months. Some have been pushed back, into early next year. And that's just really given me a chance to look at some of these other games that have been on my backlog or that are coming out that are absolutely worth your time. And I would like to bring to your attention one of these games, which is Lost in Play. If you're familiar with Gravity Falls or Beyond the Garden Wall, these sort of cartoons with that vibe, because it's partly its art style. If you look at the Lost in Play artwork and gameplay, like you'll see those influences obviously, but there's also a distinct vibe that goes with that art style, just because of like the collective sort of consciousness surrounding that. So if you're familiar, but I do recommend checking that out. That's been really well received on Steam. Just doing really great in as far as reviews and stuff. The Metacritic, like professional reviews, not quite as good. Still high, but I don't know. I always have to take, when something kind of fits into a particular kind of niche, I always am cautious about taking those reviews at face value, because I don't know if the reviewers understand like what is trying to be achieved there, if that makes sense. I've just played a lot of really great indie games that kind of fell into that problem recently, Tunic being a big one. Really enjoyed Tunic, but it was sort of a product of its marketing, Zelda clone, to really oversimplify it, Zelda clone. And so a lot of people kind of bounced off it or didn't really give it the thorough look that it needed in order to see what all was happening there. Citizen Sleeper, another one. It's sort of this dice rolling. No, it's not. I mean, there's dice involved. It's sort of a cyberpunk RPG, but again, quite good. Especially, I'm fairly critical of the cyberpunk genre. How I feel like, at least, that it did not fall into all of the particular cyberpunk tropes that exist. Stray, I consider an indie mortuary assistant. If you've been on the internet recently, if you follow, I really also like horror games. It's like I like cute things and I like scary things, and that's what I like. Mortuary assistant, definitely really shaking up the indie horror scene and getting its time in the sun. which I just think is so great to be able to have these indie games that might otherwise be overshadowed by these bigger releases having a moment. It'll be really interesting, I think, to see at the end of the year, which games really rose to the top and which ones become sort of the standouts for the year. But I know I will always remember 2022 as being like one of those really good indie years. So check some of those out. So many games now are available on Steam, on the Switch. Lost in Play is available on both Steam, Switch, and GOG. It's a very good time. Sorry, I had to take a sip of tea. Because it is time for our little body check. I was realizing, I was like, my mouth is getting dry. Make sure to hydrate, stretch, grab a snack, take care of yourself. One of these days I probably should look into getting sponsors so we can have a sponsored ad break of some kind. Mostly I just want to, here's the thing though, I don't like the idea of promoting things that I don't like, so I feel like I'd be very picky. I guess the sponsor of today might just be Stash Tea. They don't know that they're sponsoring this. They're sponsoring my ability to do this though, because I am drinking some licorice spice tea, which a friend of mine actually introduced me to. I do like licorice, but licorice spice tea was not something I would have grabbed for myself to try, and he actually convinced me to try it, and now it is my go-to herbal tea when I feel like I don't need any more caffeine for the day. There's been some other big gaming releases. Not necessarily, I wouldn't consider Kirby's Dream Buffet to necessarily be a AAA release. But so far, so good as far as the reviews. I did watch Arlo's review. I was a little disappointed though. I mean, it's a small game, right? It's a party game, so there's really only so much that can be said for a game like that. But I was really hoping to find someone who would dive into whether or not the game is good enough to buy if you don't have anybody to play it with, because that's me. I don't have a lot of friends who play on a regular enough basis to warrant buying all these games, right? When I was streaming back in the day, there were more people to play with, but it's slowed down these days. But it does look fun. I want to be a fat Kirby. I want to be stuffing my face with whipped cream and strawberries. That sounds wonderful. Last week we also had Blossom Tales 2 released. Now, it's so funny because I actually thought that one had released before or earlier this year. So my guess is that was one of the kind of early on falling to the delay apocalypse. And that just released on the 16th. Blossom Tales, speaking of Tunic, and sort of Zelda clones, not that Blossom Tales is a Zelda clone, but it's sort of in that family of games. So if you're looking to sort of scratch that itch, try looking at Blossom Tales and Blossom Tales 2. Yeah, that might be something that you really enjoy. And the reason you might have that itch, I did see while I was surfing around the interwebs this week. This is the longest gap that we have had in Zelda, the franchise, releases since A Link to the Past to Ocarina of Time. So, like, if you're feeling a little bit dehydrated in the Zelda sense, you're feeling a little bit of that Zelda drought, like, it makes sense. Because most of you, if you were like me, were very small children. You didn't know what waiting was yet, really. The concept of time was different back then. I wasn't really looking forward to the Ocarina of Time release. I didn't even know it was coming, that it existed. Another great indie title that released, Rollerdrome. Once again, that's another one that I was looking at, and I was like, I don't know if that's something that I will really jump on board with. But looking at the reviews, and it's just a rollicking good time. I have friends in the street skating space. Like, they have done like cut edits of their tricks and their skating and stuff. I've gone to like the Barn Burner in Seattle to watch like pro skaters. It is something I enjoy participating in, like the culture of, and I really respect like the athleticism required to perform in that way. I cannot myself. I don't have depth perception, so I will not be flying towards a concrete block with a rail on it and throwing myself at it and then hoping that I land a certain way. That's just not wise for me to do. But it did look like a lot of fun. Skill Up has a review of it. Looks like a lot of fun. I will, again, link a whole bunch of resources down below in the description for games, for reviews, for things we've been talking about. Because I do watch a lot of reviews of games, even if they're ones that I don't necessarily plan on playing. It gives me a really good idea for when I am interested in a game, like whose reviews do I most like vibe with. I do think Skill Up is one of them. Not always. Not always. Because I like some bad things. So he has better taste than I do. And then the Saints Row reboot is going to be launching tomorrow, assuming it doesn't like get to tomorrow and then we hear that they've delayed it for some reason. I actually think the review copies are all out there, that there's no chance of that happening. I don't think. So in other gaming news though, one of the things that came across my dashboard while I was culling this week's news, I always try to find ways I try to link things that are like most interesting, that kind of flow together, sort of build around a theme. But Mark Zuckerberg released some launch photos for his Horizons World Metaverse project. If you guys have been following that with any degree of regularity, you might remember like the floating torsos that show up in those advertisements. I actually don't get YouTube ads anymore. I finally sprang for the YouTube Premium, so I wouldn't have to watch, because I just watch so much YouTube. I have it on all the time for podcasts and gaming stuff, and I was like, I don't need to be inundated with ads. But I still see them every now and again on other streaming services. And the Metaverse stuff has looked a little rough, if I'm being honest. And so when Zuckerberg released these launch photos, he was not happy. I don't know what he expected though. Like, I feel like the Metaverse is a kind of project that is targeted towards gamers, and gamers, or at least like that, I would assume that gamers would be your early adopters, right? Like we are already used to sort of the nuances of existing in virtual spaces. This isn't, you're not going to have like your mom and dad being the first ones to jump on Metaverse, I would assume, unless they're very forward thinking. And so when he got all of this pushback on how the graphics were looking, how the avatars were looking, he got a little defensive. He's like, I posted those photos earlier this week. They were taken very quickly to celebrate a launch because they are launching the project in Spain and France. So I assume like sort of like their beta markets. But he is trying to assure, and I'm sure the investors in particular, that that Horizon and the avatar graphics have a lot more potential. And that major updates will be coming soon. TM. The TM is my own. He didn't actually say that part, but we all know how it is, right? But it's a very dangerous game to play. I mean, we see it again in the gaming industry. Listen up, Mark. There's a lot you can learn by looking at the gaming industry. Gaming studios go through this all the time. They get a little too excited, release graphics or, play tests a little too early, and things are looking a little jank. The Gollum game has recently been going through that. And it's not even like it looks like last gen graphics. It looks like 1990s graphics. I mean, the poly counts are higher because like the computing power is stronger. But that's about all it has going for you. Apparently, there's going to be a lot more announced over the next few days, so we'll have to come back to see how the story develops. They are doing their Facebook Connect conference, which they've done over the last couple of years. It's mostly, I think, a developer type conference for different programmers, studios, developers to sort of get in on like what Facebook is doing in the gaming space and now in the metaverse space, and possibly with NFT stuff as well. The NFT hopes and dreams live on. Speaking of developing stories, developments on our past segments, we have talked about Netflix a few times over the last couple months here about their mobile gaming foray that they've done. And this was a job posting that was originally spotted by NME, that Netflix will be hiring a senior software engineer specializing in rendering. So not only are they bringing on existing games like Moonlighter and Battletech, good games, very good games actually, and then of course their Point B. I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that one correct. I might not be. That one has been fun. Again, it's gonna blow up your phone. It's gonna suck your battery down. Your phone is gonna overheat. But fun games. So it's interesting that they are gonna keep pushing. You have the quarterly contractions, gaming industry having a little bit of a downturn, very, very, very small, and to be expected. You have HBO launching their Last of Us 2 show, or not Last of Us 2, just Last of Us, and then the Blade movie, which, with the gaming rumors, it's not as if Ubisoft could, won't ever make a Blade game. You just have all of these, again, these cross-media entertainment opportunities that Netflix is jumping on. It will be very cool to see if they can actually do something. Because like Google tried. Google tried. Google Stadia. This is the first streaming service, that I'm aware of, at least, video streaming service that has really jumped into, this cross media thing. It feels like something YouTube would have done, actually, just because of the Let's Play community and presence here. Like, yeah, I'm gonna be honest with you, running a gaming channel on YouTube does not make you money. Like, you do it because you love video games and you like the community, right? But the fact that Netflix is diving into that, maybe that will pull YouTube into considering that kind of thing. You can argue that Facebook is already doing it with their Metaverse stuff, but it's still very new tech, very, very new tech. It'll be interesting to see exactly how that one develops, but I think it's good for Netflix. They have had some drama recently. They have done a little bit of a struggle. So if they can really pull this off and start actually producing their own games, because they have acquired a few smaller studios over the past 6 months-ish, over the last couple quarters, if they can pull something together and have it be, we talk about console sellers, right, in the gaming space. That's part of the whole big drama with, like, between Microsoft, Xbox, Sony situation. And Netflix could create a game, because they could. I don't know how likely it is, but they could. That is a subscription booster, I guess. A lead generator, if you will, for bringing people onto their platform, because it's all a battle for attention, and I don't think anybody knows that better than these streaming services, and that includes YouTube, TikTok. It in particular includes Netflix, Hulu, Peacock, Paramount. No, Peacock is the Paramount one. I forget. But they're all battling for the attention of the consumer, because that attention translates to money, and especially in a medium that Netflix caters to, which is more traditional shows, movies, long form content. Because, if somebody made a video on YouTube that was as long as a movie, we'd call it long form content and be like, oh, that's a commitment. I gotta think about if I'm gonna watch that. I might have to watch it in a few, sit down sessions. So that's another space that I'll be keeping my eye on, because it looks like they are not chill. Netflix is not chill about climbing into the gaming space. They are getting fired up. But I have been watching a lot more traditional media then, if I have to be honest. That's been more on my mind these days than watching stuff on YouTube. Although my friend VZed did release their Tunic video, and I did do a little bit of script reading for it, script review for it. I think he did a great job. I'm going to link that down below too. That was a fun one. And again, the more people that I can get sort of, into the Tunic pipeline, the better. Mostly because that game drove me absolutely insane. So I need other people to go absolutely insane over it. Like, not insane in a good way. Like, oh, this is insane. It's like, no, this game literally was giving me migraines, and making the video for it and like trying to figure out how to explain that also gave me migraines. I'm a migraine mess, I tell you. It's a fun time. And while I was looking around the internet for all of this juicy content this week, I often see older things. Usually an article that's recommended to me at the bottom of another article. this little tidbit actually was attached to an article that I'm going to be saving for next week, because it's such a new story that I feel like I can't quite talk about it yet. We need more sides. I'll give you a little hint though. If you're in the UK, you probably already know what it is. But back in February, Sid Meier of Civilization fame gave a little interview, which I read through. It's always such a shame because I want to be there. I want to be the one asking the questions and talking about the things, because my favorite Civ game of all times, like, or I guess we'll say a 4X game, which the Civilization games are sort of the pioneers of the 4X genre, which is what? Explore, exploit, exterminate, expand. I don't think I got those in the right order, that's fine. But with Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri, if you played that growing up as a PC game, I don't think it was ever on any consoles, but please talk to me about that game, because I have told people, especially even other Civilization fans, and they're like, I have never heard of this game of that Sid Meier made it, and I played the bejeebies out of it. I would like drag my siblings into playing it as well. Anyways, so Sid Meier gave this interview to BBC, actually, back in February. And so sort of talking about his experience being in the games industry for the past 30 years. And he was already talking about sort of how he saw that there might be a little bit of a pushback of sales and things because of how obsessed the industry has become with monetization. Sorry, I was like really trying to find a great way to like bring that all together in a really clever way, but I just was kind of struggling because we've had all of these pushbacks against things like loot boxes, NFTs not being used correctly, sort of these gacha games, a lot of the releasing games in what feels like incomplete products, only to charge people for basically getting the rest of the product, right? So it's just very interesting because like he's been around for a long time. He's seen how dramatically games have changed over the last few decades, and how the popularity has even eclipsed the movie and music industry. It's this really cool thing where gaming is no longer just a nerd's domain. It is actual entertainment. It is a force to be reckoned with. But the problem is when you have that kind of success, it is very easy to get caught up in the dollar signs. And so he was sort of warning even back in February, like, you have to be making games that are fun to play. And it's not very sexy, right? Because figuring out the like core game design and gameplay, like, it's not graphics, it's not concept art, it's not programming, it's just often one or two people or a small team, sitting around. It's like, what's the game? And it's pencil and paper or a whiteboard. But it's so, you can tell how that can be so easy to forget because we've played games that have sort of lost sight of what this game is. And it's, again, looking at the indies that have released this year, being able to see you know what the game is. With a successful indie especially. What's the game? Build a cult. What's the game? Play as a cat. What's the game? Solve these puzzles. It's a very simple concept. And the bigger the game, you would think, well, the more complex the game is, right? That isn't necessarily true. You look at God of War. What's the game? Deliver the ashes to the tallest peak in Midgard. Or was it all the realms? Because we technically been Midgard, so then they've got to go to, yeah. So that's the game. Everything else in between is just like the flesh and the muscle and the connective tissue. But the bones is get from point A to point B. And not all games do that so well. Not all games do that so well. We've seen a lot of AAA games fail, and fail hard. Cyberpunk failed hard. They're trying to turn things around. No Man's Sky failed hard. They've actually turned things around. Halo recently took out their last Spartan standing game mode because it wasn't serving the community. Because the matchmaking was taking too long. They didn't have enough of a player base, apparently. And people were sad. The players are sad. They're like, why are you getting rid of this, core piece of your game because they decided it wasn't serving the players? That's a really hard decision to make as a game developer, is to take things away. It's always fun to add things. It is no fun to take things away. And all you want to do is just keep those bank notes rolling in. Like, if we add more, if we do more, if we go bigger, we can charge $70 for a game. We can charge $80 for a game. US dollars. Since that's where I'm based, that's what I'm thinking. But the consumers are getting wise. The consumers are not going to put up with this inflation much longer. We have real economic inflation going on in the real world. We're becoming more and more sensitive to how we're spending our money. We don't want to spend it on games that are just fluff, that don't deliver. So if I had to encourage you to spend your money anywhere, not sponsored. This whole project is not sponsored. Find an indie title that you think you'll enjoy. Find somebody you can chat with who has similar tastes, maybe, who has better tastes, maybe. Like, what would you play? What would you buy? Go spend your money there. It's a great way to support the economy. And that's all I have on my docket today. A little bit shorter than usual, I suppose, but hopefully still enough for you to enjoy, to sink your teeth into, to get you thinking about what's going on in the games industry today, this week. And I'll see you guys hopefully next week. If you did like this and you're still awake, feel free to drop a comment or thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it. I did try to do a little bit more structure this week to get things more cohesive, more listenable, perhaps. So hopefully I succeeded, and until next week, sweet dreams.